They've all come up through this business in multiple of different ways. And not to mention what they do for the ISA every day, working with writers, producers, directors, etc. So this is going to be a fantastic panel. I think we're going to learn a lot. I'm sure we're going to have some fun. That goes without saying. So enjoy it. I want to say a thank you to our sponsors today. Third Thursdays, we always get to give out some fun prizes. So today, prizes are coming from Page Turner Screenplays, the Capital Fund Screenplay Competition, Killer Shorts Horror Short Screenplay Competition, and the Great American Script Competition. These are companies that we've worked with for a long time. We've partnered with them, we trust them, we know them. We're excited to be able to give you entries from them. All you have to do is go on Twitter and tweet about today's event. Give us your favorite tidbit, your favorite piece of advice that you got, and tag us at Network ISA. From everybody who tweets, we will pick some random winners and let you know within the week. You'll be hearing from us with your prize. So we are doing our very best to offer everybody a lot of free and affordable resources during this challenging time that we're living in. So to that end, please check out our various resources such as articles and advice, podcasts, pro tips and tricks. You guys, Pro Tips and Tricks has over 700 videos on there right now, which is just amazing. We have Scott doing red carpet interviews with a ton of fantastic people on there. We have all of our past events, including the virtual Third Thursdays, our classes, and our conversations that have been online for the past 5 months. A wealth of information. Check it out. And upcoming events, we have Max actually has his webinar next Wednesday. He's going to be talking about page formatting. These are always really educational talks, so please tune in. You will be able to register for that on our classes page, not the events page, but the classes page. And next Thursday, we are doing our first online writing sprint. This is going to be hosted by Writer's Block, and it's on their Discord channel. It's free. All you have to do is go to our events page and register. It's going to be 50 minutes of writing, and then afterwards, everybody chatting on the chat with each other. So it's only ISA, which is really cool. It's just another opportunity for everybody to come together as a community, to get your writing juices flowing, and to meet some new people and make some new connections. And then September 2nd, Jess Hines is coming back to give us another free class. If you missed the first one, it's a must-see on the Pro Tips and Tricks page. She is amazing. This one is going to be about rewriting, and it's called Turning Shit into Fertilizer. So I think that's a great segue into introducing Max and the team. I'm going to let him take it away. And have a great time.
I'll do my best to turn this into fertilizer. But welcome, everybody. We have a whole wide breadth of topics that we're going to cover today. And it's going to be very conversational roundtable stuff. So most of you watching probably already know most of who is on this panel already. So instead of going into like backstory bios, which are all extremely worthwhile and it would probably take forever anyway, because we've all been doing so much for so long. Well, let me start. Before I do that, did anybody want to add any comments or anything before we started? Anything that I may have forgotten? Yeah, Jerren.
Just a quick thing to shout out Carissa, who was on for a second, who is also a fantastic actress who I think just shot a movie. She's our social media manager, and she's doing great. So I just wanted to shout her out. That was it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Carissa is so active on social media. Obviously, she's our social media manager, but you should all be following us in every place you can find us. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all over the place. And of course, utilize the website. Whether you're a free member or a Connect member, you should be using it. It's all, Craig started this thing as a resource for writers, and it has grown to be a huge resource with a whole bunch of other things that we've added to it. So anyway, we're happy that you're here. We're happy that you're participating. But let's start. I haven't decided who I want to start with. I guess because Shayna's on the top of the screen next to me, I'll start with Shayna. But these are just easy little intro.
I'm ready.
A little bit of a way for everybody to get to know our staff on a slightly more intimate level as opposed to just reading a bio. So favorite story of all time, Shayna, whether it's a book, a movie, anything.
Oh man,
So,
that's a hard one for me. The type of stories that I like are the hero's journey, and anything in that realm that has magical elements included in it. That's my favorite. That's what I started with when I was a kid, like the Neverending Story, Labyrinth, Lord of the Rings. I love The Sword in the Stone. I love Robin Hood. I
I
love,
was going to say King Arthur's Mine. So
yeah, King Arthur, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Those are really like the magical hero's journey, the quest. Those kinds of stories are my favorite.
Right. The little person doing something huge and amazing,
Yeah.
not realizing you have the power to perform and overcome.
Right.
I love that. Yeah.
And then second place is like fish out of water comedies.
Okay.
That's,
Great.
yeah.
I mean, I've watched Dumb and Dumber around how many times, so.
Yeah, Tommy Boy is my favorite.
Yeah, not my favorite story of all time, but come on.
Not my favorite story, but I had to throw it in there. Tommy Boy. Woo woo.
Felicity, let's go to you.
My favorite films are things like The Hours and American Beauty. So obviously and the thing about both those movies is they are directed by British theatre directors. So I'm obviously, as well as madly in love with words, I'm also very impressed by style and how stylistically the story is told. I like things to be multi-layered. I like to be surprised. I don't like to know who everyone is in the beginning. I want to discover things as we go through. I think that Jim Carrey is a kind of very underrated straight actor. Eternal Sunshine, again, is one of my most favorite movies, as long as I'm allowed 20 minutes at the end to cry by myself about all the relationships I've ever had in my life. So I guess I'm kind of that's my kind of thing, my kind of style.
You want to feel something deeper than the surface level stuff.
Yeah, I want to feel it and I want to see it, and then I want the words to be pretty. Yeah, and Eternal Sunshine.
Okay, Craig, we'll go to you. I'm just going down my line here.
Yeah, right on. I have two favorite movies. One is The Shawshank Redemption. Really drawn to that story, and more than just overcoming this great obstacle and him kind of getting himself into a horrible position.
Literally redemption.
Yeah, but I think there's a friendship love story in there too that I'm really fond of. It's like I have a great family, but my friendships have always been the most important part of my life is some of my closest friends. And so I think that kind of connects for me, is watching those two characters is, to me, a love story of two great friends. So, and then there's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which is just we got stuck down in spring break in a rainstorm. So that's one of the only movies my aunt had. And I was already addicted to Gene Wilder and just watched it, I don't know, 7 or 8 times while I was down there, and just fell in love with everything that Gene Wilder does. And so in that movie, just, again, this, the honesty and sincerity of that young boy, Charlie, and going after this dream. Dreams are a big thing for me, overcoming obstacles, big dreams. So that was really, those two movies have really touched me through my life.
Okay, great. Scott, are you going to say like Amityville Horror or?
No, I was kind of thinking that, yeah, you guys are probably going to assume I would talk about some great horror films, which I think those can be some of the most powerful films when they're done right, which seldom happens. But for me, I love, it starts with character. I love big ensemble movies that have a really colorful cast of very well-defined characters. I mean, Royal Tenenbaums, I love so much, and Grand Budapest Hotel. So obviously there's a little theme. Also, I love movies that take place, or stories, I guess, that take place in a world that we haven't seen very much. And to me, not to say that this is one of the greatest films ever, but this is like a constantly rewatchable one for me, is The Big Year, a movie about bird watching, which on the face of it, how boring can that be? But you have good characters, and you've never actually seen this kind of a world before. So when you have, and again, helps you when you have Steve Martin and Jack Black as part of the cast. But But yeah, I really find that kind of stuff fascinating. So really great characters in a world we haven't seen.
It is fun to see how it connects to people. From what I know about all of you, I know you all pretty well. And I love that. It's because Scott is all about seeking answers to things and figuring things out and being totally fine with not knowing the answer to some things. So being introduced to brand new worlds that you're like, wow, I'm learning something. That's all about the research. I don't know. I think it's kind of fascinating. Anyway, Jerren, we'll dive into you.
I agree, Max. That's a good way to put it. Quickly, I mean, I guess upon reflection, the story and movie that has ended up inspiring me or influencing me the most is RoboCop.
Nice.
The original one.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's like it's pulp, but it's so smart. It's like smart pulp. It's funny. It is it's horrific. It's action packed. Most of all, it's just like the satire in it is incredible. Like if you watch that now, you'll be like, oh my God, they predicted everything that's happening today. So that's the most influential movie to me, I guess, if I had to pick one. I think story-wise, just in a broader term, I like the kinds of stories that can be a simple plot that can be readapted, by which I mean A Fistful of Dollars by Sergio Leone was adapted by Akira Kurosawa as Yojimbo, and those inspired Star Wars, and it's a lot of the Western stories and stuff I think are always kind of very adaptable by different cultures and different people, and I tend to kind of like that kind of story in general. So that's me.
What do you like to see at the end of your stories, Jerren? Like good end, happy endings, or achievements?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tend to go for the endings that are a hard-won victory. I think the word is Pyrrhic. I never know how to say that word, but meaning that there is a happy ending, but there's still a sense of loss involved. It's not just everyone saves the day and everyone's fine. I usually kind of tend to go for the stuff that's what makes me it resonates the longest. Basically, is when I go, oh, I'm satisfied by the ending, but I still then, when thinking back on it, I go like, oh, well, there's a lot of loss and there's a lot of attrition to get to that point.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you, Max?
What's that?
Yeah.
How about you?
How about you?
Oh, I mentioned King Arthur. I mean, King Arthur, I guess, would be my original favorite story. Just my dad was a big King Arthur fan. And so I learned about it a little bit when I was little, but I loved the idea of seeing a sword in the stone, no one else can take it out, and then some kid comes along and he's the one who can pull it out. It's like that hidden ability inside of you that you are more than what you believe in. And so I love those stories where most stories have some form of that evolution of a character where the person becomes something more than they were by the end, or at least they learn some form of a lesson, whether it's difficult or fun or easy. But going beyond what you imagined yourself could be, I think that I love those stories. It's inspiring.
I agree. I love those too. Like you
Excalibur.
find that thing in you that's like makes you special or whatever.
Yeah. It's optimistic. I'll admit I like the happy endings. I like the Spielberg riding off into the sunset kind of stuff. Maybe it's a rose-colored glasses kind of way of going through my life. But
I also like the endings where, like, for example, Lost in Translation, where you're left with sort of a longing to continue the story in your own mind, and you're not sure exactly what happened, and so you have to come to your own conclusions. I like movies like that too.
Yeah.
But they have to be really well done, because otherwise, if they just leave you hanging, that's annoying.
But Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Felicity, is a perfect example of that, where they almost quite literally say, we already know what's going to happen. And so it's kind of the reverse of that, where we're like, well, maybe it'll be different this time. And you don't know what's going to happen with that couple. You may assume that they're going to break up again in the future, but there's like hope there in this really dark moment. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Finding each other again. So even though they broke up, that if they'd have a clean slate, they would still feel the same way. It's kind of, I mean, I feel like it's, in relationships, we so get hung up on the small stuff, and actually who they are as a person, we're madly in love with, but everything else gets in the way of it. So I guess it's quite romantic too.
Romance. Yeah, interesting. Nobody mentioned romance. I mean, I guess romance fits within some of these.
I mean, I could watch Pride and Prejudice. I have watched it probably 100 times. I'm talking the new one, the Joe Wright one with Keira Knightley.
Keira Knightley. Yeah.
I could watch that. Like when I'm on an airplane, if I'm flying international, it's always on and I will watch it 3 times in a row because nothing else to me is like better than watching that movie. So I'm all about the romance. It just has to be a little bit like angsty.
All right. Well, it gives a little bit of an insight to everybody watching and listening, just about, who we are. We're obviously, and if you're coming in for the first time, you have no idea who we are. We are all executives with the International Screenwriters Association. Craig founded it about, 11, 12 years ago, Craig?
January 2008.
12 years. Yeah. And our focus, really across the board for all of us as a general company theme, is to help writers and creatives break in, figure out a way to become exposed to the industry one way or another through education or through, literal physical exposure, taking meetings and getting their scripts out there, contests, etc. So it's all about this idea of breaking in. So that's kind of where we're going to start in terms of the discussion. And there are 2 sides of this. For one, I want to find out how we all kind of broke in ourselves. Not that we are in any way Spielberg. That's a whole other level of breaking in and becoming, okay, Scott, I guess Scott would be up at that level. But there have been moments in terms of feeling like I came over the hump in some way. So we'll start kind of in reverse this time. We'll start with Jerren. And I want to do a little bit of a dual question. So Jerren, you have the difficulty of answering it first. But for one, what does breaking in really look like? Like what does it actually mean? But then where and when was the moment in your life where you felt like, I think I got over that creative breaking in point?
Yeah, interesting question. And I want to try to be succinct. I think about it a lot because I think you break in and then you break in again. And there's always the next thing. As soon as you hit a certain point, you're already looking forward. I'm trying to be better about that, about being present and being happy with the things that have happened. So for me, I just wrote and directed my first feature film, and it's coming out as I think I could say, as a Shudder original, got distributed. To me, that's by far the biggest. I feel like, okay, I finally crossed the hurdle. I made a movie. That took 5 to 6 years plus. That's 5 to 6 years of working with my co-writer. So along the way, there's several successes and stuff, and that's contest placements, and that's talking to managers and all that stuff. And again, you always just go, okay, cool, what's next? And I would advise that people at least process that and think about like that's already a great point to be at, is if you place in a contest or if you get a general with someone or you talk to a manager. Because I wish looking back that I would have kind of focused on that more. Did that answer both questions? I'm sorry. I was also trying to comment back to Christy when you were asking.
For sure. I mean, obviously, perfect example. You had not yet directed a feature film. You did. Like that's a concrete example of, I wasn't a paid director. Now I'm a paid director. Like that in and of itself is a great example. But in terms of what does it really mean? I think you started off with that topic. Like, what does it really mean to be breaking in? So maybe you could talk about that a little bit more in terms of it's different for everybody. And then there are different levels where there is a breaking into the next ceiling.
Yeah, that's the thing to me is levels. And it took me a while to see this. I think this industry has conditioned all of us to think when you break in, that's when you do the Sixth Sense and you're all of a sudden this multi-million-dollar whatever making. And it takes a long time. I wish I could tell so many writers that's kind of to me, that's a strange way of looking at it. And again, this is from me, myself, learning it and processing this. If you look at your screenwriting as a business, which sounds crass, I guess, or whatever, commercial, but you have to look at it as like your heart and soul. It's your business. It's your small business. You can't just start out advertising to the biggest, expect to get the biggest brand name, whatever deal. Or I guess to put it more succinctly, if you go interview for a job position, you're not going to go, great, I'm interviewing for the low-level position, but give me the VP. And that's how I look at trying to sell a script. is everyone thinks that like selling the low budget script or something is an impediment to getting where they need to be, rather than like, actually that's the step you got to take. So I had to kind of keep scaling back till there was like, we knew our brand, we knew our voice, we knew how we can get attention for something, and at least a concrete yes. And that took a lot of scaling back and figuring out how to hone and put it into that perspective. And now that the other things happen, because then, I have representation, who's sending stuff out and all that stuff, but I'm still in the same spot. It's just like, I just want the next step up, not jumping to whatever. So to me, that's what I like to tell most writers is focus on what you can do in the smallest way and take those steps.
Yeah, because you could argue, just looking at a different industry, in basketball, when Michael Jordan won his first NBA finals, it's not like he was like, all right, I'm done.
Right.
He did the impossible and did the one thing he set out to do. And then he's like, well, I'm just going to keep doing it. And he did. But that's the same level in the creative atmosphere, where if somebody wins an Academy Award, their career isn't over. I mean, there's kind of a lot of way it's like totally changing now. And yes, that argued it's the epitome of success, but there's always more success to continue, at least to attempt to achieve.
Just sorry, I didn't want to hog what someone just asked. Is the material more important than the contract networking, or both? It's honestly both. A lot of people say, we hear a lot, it drives me crazy, that just write a great script and people will come looking, and it's no longer that way anymore. It truly isn't. That's like 20% of the work. Again, you got to think of it as like a small business. You got to write something, you got to have a great product, and then you got to figure out how to market that product. Sorry, continue.
Well, but even to that point, like, agents will say that they only get paid 10% because you need to do 90% of the work.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing to take in, is that you need to do 90% of the work with the writing, with the networking, with connections. It's not just, I'll get an agent and they'll take my whole life and turn it into magic. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
I found that in the book world, not that in any way did I write like, The Great Gatsby or something, but the idea of someone could write the next Grapes of Wrath, but if no one knows it exists, then what? You just have a nice little manuscript on your desk. So you do. You're right, Jerren. You got to get it out there and let people understand. Look, why this is why it's important. Scott, let's jump to you and your ideas of breaking in, and then when you felt like you first did.
It's a tough one because I think a lot of people have career changes in their life, and I am certainly one, because I came up, I've always loved writing, but I broke in, you would say, on the production side, and I worked in production for a very long time. And I do think that actually influenced my writing to some degree. Just a little side note, because you really see when you're on a set that the screenplay, the sides that you're going to shoot that day, this is such a blueprint. Now I understand why it's formatted like this, because like anytime you see an all caps letter thing, that's telling a department head to pay attention to this moment. But anyway, side note. So I think everybody should be a PA, a day player, if you can get on a set. That said, I think the most important thing is I was just getting in the room, whatever that means. I got out when I graduated college. I graduated like Max from Columbia College in Chicago, and at that point there were no tax incentives for filming in Chicago. So that was famously the year that the movie Chicago was shot in Toronto, and I ended up going to visit a friend in Hawaii who was student teaching, and just kind of on a lark, I reached out to their film office out there, and kind of disingenuously pretended I was location scouting. And so they sent me all of the resources for everybody on the island, anybody in any aspect of production. And I reached out to everybody, and I filled up my my dance card with meetings while I was on vacation, and I got 2 job offers. And the job I got was a bad one, honestly. It is your first job out of college, often is. It was with a documentary company as an editor. But I was able to then leave there and work on a real production, and that just kept snowballing and snowballing. And then I was working on huge things as a production assistant, and then working my way up the production side. But then eventually I came back home to Chicago, and even though I had a great resume, nobody knew me. So it didn't really matter if I had a good resume. So I got on set any way I could, which was by being an extra in movies. And it only took one day on set as an extra talking to PAs before I got hired on as part of the crew, and then worked on everything in Chicago for a while. So yeah, I guess going out there and finding any kind of a way in to be in front of the right people and to take those opportunities when you can, all the time. And then I guess on the writing side, I did a couple smaller documentaries, which, you know, it's all about following your passions. And I didn't know I had a passion for ghost stories, even when I was doing my first documentary about ghost stories. But that's when it was kind of awoken in me that like, oh, this is actually fascinating stuff. And so then I did so much research, I couldn't get it all into the documentary. So then I ended up writing a book, and that was in 1999. And that has snowballed to all of these other bizarre different side paths and opportunities, like writing tours that people take, and on and on.
So many conferences. I mean, you get hired to speak at conferences all the time. I feel like once you do something creative and then people notice you and then they start paying you for versions of that, then it's like, hey, wow, I mean, this is this is a real thing.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways to write that will produce some income for you. Plus, when you're writing on stuff that you're passionate about anyway, it's fun. It's something you'd like to be doing. And yeah, the more you can put yourself out there, it's wild. Because, you know, I did a LA Hauntings tour company for a while, which again, wrote research and then gave those tours. But because of that, I had a Yelp listing. And because of that, different production companies were then reaching out for me, asking me to pitch them ideas. So it's weird, all of these different routes in that go back into the industry.
Yeah. Felicity, let's jump to you.
I guess for me, it's always been just doing it. So I went to, I did my A-levels and stuff, and I kind of went to college for theatre and did that and had a great time doing that. But then I was in my early 20s and I had no money and nowhere to live. So I then moved to London and I started working in a box office in a theatre. And I kind of was still around that same kind of atmosphere of theatrical people as story and storytelling. And I had met the most amazing friends and had the most drunken and wonderful 20s. But at 28, I had to kind of, surprisingly enough, at 28, I had to decide to go back to college because it felt like something was missing in me. And that's when I kind of did my master's and I did writing, directing, and acting, and sort of kind of like put together all the pieces. I was literally there 3 weeks and I was like, oh my God, I know this is what I should do, and I didn't need to come here for a year. Oh, sorry. That's me.
That's your past coming back to remind you.
I'm too hot. That's me exploding. So I think it's definitely about confidence. It took me a while there's been a few comments about confidence in yourself and believing in yourself and knowing that when you're ready, you will never be ready. There is no time to be ready. Sometimes if someone else believes in you, it helps you a bit, but you just have to do it. It's like literally kind of just hold your nose and jump in the water. So I went back to college, started a theatre company. And I've been running that company for 20 years. And I've actually been helping other, it's a small little theatre in London, and I've been helping other people start their journeys. I feel like I've always wanted to help people on their journey. That's why I now work with the screenwriters. I like to help people and encourage them and help them discover who they are and their voice, whilst also having a brilliant time myself doing it, helping them. As far as the producing side, again, I kind of fell into it. People go, you're pretty organized, and you can talk most people into anything. And I'm like, that's correct. So I have produced stuff and I will continue to do that. I like, again, helping someone reveal and get to their vision and get to their dream. It's weird, actually. I don't think I have that same massive focus for myself of, you know, I gotta win the Oscar, you know, or anything like that. I think it's more about success for me is personal success, about how happy a life you're having. I think you should create art and follow your passions to have a happy life. If something makes you miserable, don't keep doing it. So I feel like, you know, we're having the most incredible meetings with the ISA right now. You know, we spoke to Reese Witherspoon's company this morning, Margot Robbie's company the other day, Marvel, the list goes on. There's definitely been a sense in me that I now understand I'm supposed to be in that room talking to those people about the writers. on the ISA development slate, it's kind of wonderful to be there. You know, I'm there, but I'm also there with 150 other people and Jerren and Reggie. So, because, you know, I'm not only in the room, we're all in there together. So I'm just basically singing the song for all those incredible, talented people. Do something, just do it, I think, is my only way of, just have to keep going and just try and do it.
Yeah, it seems like purpose and validation, like following a purpose, living a purposeful life, but then a little bit of validation of always knowing you belonged in the room, and now you're reminded, yeah, I was right. You know?
Sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah. So Craig, go ahead.
Well, I mean, everything everyone's saying makes sense, and is similar to me in that I'm the kind of guy who's like, try everything. But I agree with like what Jerren was saying about there's certain, rungs on the ladder you have to go up. But I'll try, I've tried everything to try to break in. And that starts with, I was in the mortgage industry for a long time, but really wanted to be an actor. So knowing once we got out of when I got out of the mortgage industry, I was going to move to California and pursue acting. But at 28, having nothing on my resume, who was going to look at me in Los Angeles? So I just said, well, I'll just write a screenplay, as easy as that is, right? And we went, my friends and I took whatever money we could scrape together, and we asked as many favors, and we went and shot a feature. And it wasn't good. But I learned a ton about the process in having done that. I learned about the things that worked in the writing. I learned about the being on set, directing, producing. I mean, it was just trial by fire. But it was so much fun that I'm like, all right, I got to write another screenplay. So I found another story that was really personal to me, and I wrote that screenplay. But then this time I got some guidance from a friend on the script. And then we scraped together whatever money we could. Again, my parents even had saved money for me for when I got married, and they gave that to me to use to marry myself to the film industry. And so I took that money and put it into this film. We shot that, and it went out to some festivals, and I started to get good feedback on my writing, which was really exciting. Not so much my acting, but that's all right. So I was really excited about films, but now I was out of money. Even my parents' wedding money is gone. So woke up from a dream one night and wrote down this short. I pitched it to a friend. Then we were out pitching to, we met some different people in the industry who were looking to get an infomercial shot. So in exchange for getting the equipment and use of this guy's mansion to shoot this short, we shot his infomercial. So we were doing trades wherever we could. Shot this short. It ended up getting into a bunch of festivals and won some awards. And that was, well, like, all right, great. So the writing's going better, the filmmaking's going better. But it wasn't until I was at the dog park in Chicago, having moved back from Los Angeles, and met a guy there who, just random conversation, asked me about what I've been doing. Told him about this short, Contract Killers. He wanted to see it. I got him a DVD. He watched it. And the next day he wrote me a check to shoot my pilot, Wrigleyville. So I had been developing this show, created a Bible, hired a writer to write out this whole pilot. And then we got that money and some more money from even Molly Cash, who's on the ISA team. Her dad invested in my pilot. This is all for projects under $50,000, like way under. But we shot this pilot, and between that getting shot and Contract Killers being in some festivals, Steve Zacharias, who saw the Contract Killers, Steve Zacharias wrote Revenge of the Nerds and loved it, and called me and asked if he could help me with my career. So he got it out to a manager in California. So got the short, got Wrigleyville to a manager, and then simultaneously we were just getting into more festivals, TV festivals, and people were starting to have conversations. So it was pretty much just try everything we could to get any project that we produced out to as many people as we could while writing new ones and coming up with new ideas. And eventually, Wrigleyville got seen at a festival and a agent in training at CAA. She loved it. She happened to be from Chicago, and pitched it to her boss, who then hip pocketed the show. So then the show was getting shopped around all of Los Angeles and was getting some interest, but it never really got anywhere. What happened was writer's strike hit in 2008, and CAA no longer considered me much of a priority. They wanted to put obviously the writers who make money to work, and so we got booted. But I don't consider any of that a bad thing. The way I look at it, just like the rungs that Jerren was talking about, going up this ladder and taking one step at a time, is I was trying all these different things, which led me to building the ISA. And so, and I feel like that's getting me to become a better writer. We're now having, like Felicity mentioned, connections for other writers, but then there's some personal projects we're all working on. Everybody on this team is a writer or filmmaker, or storyteller in some capacity. And so we're building a community and doing something pretty great. So all those steps lead to something you just don't know. And I find that the most fascinating thing about life in general. Started with wanting to be an actor for arrogant reasons, probably more than anything. And now here I am, running an organization with some amazing people and building a great community. So I guess that's my end point.
There's so many lessons in that, especially in that the process of breaking in never really ends. So Shayna, tell us about your experience with that, your beliefs in breaking in.
You just said it, like you keep breaking in and breaking in. I don't personally feel like I've broken in at the level that I want to break in yet, but I do like to celebrate every victory on that path. I started as a reality TV producer. But when I first moved to LA, I got jobs as PAs, and then I got a job as an assistant to a manager. Then I got a job in casting. Then I got a job working on a reality show as an assistant. And then from there, I just worked my way up to associate producer, supervising producer. I didn't really want to do reality, but the thing about reality TV is it's still storytelling. And I worked on some really fun shows, and I learned a lot about a lot of different things. So pretty much like every time I would get a new job and I worked my way up to like a higher level in that world, it was a celebration. It was a victory. It was a door opening. It was a step going up. When I decided to leave reality TV and just focus on scripted, and I joined ISA and met all of you guys, and then I had produced a couple short films, which producing reality shows and producing scripted shows are not that different. You just have a script, which in ways is easier. You have a bigger team of people who sometimes you're doing everything, which is what you do on reality shows. You kind of are everybody, everything. And working on a short film that won awards and went all over the world and is on Amazon Prime. It's called Lunch Ladies, if you guys want to watch it. I think that's a step in the right, a break in. I think that then after that, I directed a short. So that was a victory for me. In terms of writing, like I'm still putting myself out there and meeting people. But again, like I do think it's like little steps that you can take, whatever gets you to the place. But for what Felicity said, you're never going to be ready to break in. So somebody in the chat had mentioned their confidence and they feel like they have one shot to break in. And if they don't do it, then they're going to blow their chance. That's not true because you can just keep going. And ultimately, sometimes you just have to put yourself out there and try something that terrifies you to no end. For example, when I joined a writing group, I only started writing scripts about 10 years ago. I've always been a storyteller, but I was never really confident in, I can write a script. So I joined a writing group and I was terrified, absolutely terrified. First time reading in there, terrified. And then you get through it and then you're like, okay, I can do this. So sometimes you have to just do the thing that scares you the most and try it. Because other people feel the same way that you do. Other people feel scared. Other people feel like, oh God, I'm not ready for this. But just do it. Even if you fail miserably and fall on your butt, get back up. If this is the path you want to take and you want to make movies, go do it. Find people who are like you and go make something.
To tie what Shayna said to Craig's story, because Craig started his whole thing borrowing money and making something. The movie I made was, we were like, we're just going to write something and make it, like on iPhones if we need to. And it got bigger than that because someone bought it, but it started from there. And I just thought, we're all independent contractors in the writing world. If you're a writer, you're going to be an independent contractor. So you got to know how to do this stuff and just put your head down and do it. Anyway, so yeah. Well, both of you.
The idea of not waiting for somebody else to break you in.
Yeah, exactly.
And trying to do it yourself, and there are ways to do it. Yes, it's easy to say, well, I don't have any money, I can't find any money. But just my own personal story, I'll keep it relatively brief because I do want to look at the polls after this, because I did a little brief peek, and it's like, wow, I love how many numbers are in there. But I've been in the industry for 16 years or so, maybe a little longer, working in assistant positions, on people's desks. And I ended up working at a school for screenwriters years ago. That's really was where I learned how to hone in on my craft. During that time, I wrote a whole bunch of different versions of one particular screenplay. I finally got it to a place where I thought it was great. And I gave it to 4 friends that were in the industry. I knew they weren't going to BS me, and they all said pretty much the same notes independently, that it was too young and it needed source material behind it, meaning it needed to be based on something because it was a little bit too big of a story. And to speak to what you were saying, Shayna, that they were all saying you would need to write the book for this first. And I'm like, I can't write a book. Like, there's no way I can, a novel based on this. And so I just was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And not that this broke me into major success necessarily, but I did end up writing the novel. It ended up winning the Los Angeles Book Festival in terms of the young adult category. I sold 12,000 copies in a month. I mean, so all of that then came from a level of so-called failure where people were saying, it's not really there yet. I'm still trying to build that world and series and book and working on this, so it's an ongoing process. So I think you all touched on something about there's never a place that you then arrive. There's no arrival. You're always just constantly moving through and trying to find more success. I mean, and we should be, and not that we shouldn't be appreciating the current success that we have. It's just, what can I do tomorrow where I'm just a little bit better than I used to be? All right, let's just quickly look at the polls. Where are you in your screenwriting career? 60% said have written 3 or more scripts, but no options with sales.
Oh,
okay. Only 1% have representation or are employed as a writer. What do you feel you're missing that would get you to the next level? Contacts in the industry, 73%. 63% says representation. We're going to talk about representation a little bit. Maybe not jump into that right now. But Molly, have you looked through the polls at all? Did you find anything that was, no, we're still all just kind of looking at the first time. Okay.
Yep, I'm looking with you.
Yeah, what do you feel it's missing? 21% said confidence. In my own personal experience, I think most of us can speak to this, we're never going to have full confidence. You're never going to get to a point where like, yep, 100%, got it. There's just, the creative process just doesn't really allow it, which I think is healthy.
And usually it's the people who are like, this is the greatest story ever told in the whole world. And it's, it's usually like 156-page script that, it's like, don't always believe somebody who's like, well, I got it all figured out. Nobody does.
Right.
We're all learning all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you constantly hear people who are huge in the industry talk about they sometimes feel like they're a fraud. Like they don't know what they're doing either. You never really are 100%. You're always questioning, right?
That's purely about the empathy thing and the compassion key, and that's what makes you a good storyteller, is the fact that you actually are sensitive to the world, to yourself, to your own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise that story about I'm just brilliant, I think it's a very narrow path to tread.
Yeah, there's a level of humility that's healthy when you start not believing in yourself. Obviously, that's the problem. I remember when I was hired to be the screenwriting coach for Bryce Howard. This was 11 years ago. And I remember being on the phone with her having a thought of, I wonder when she's going to realize I don't know what I'm talking about. So there was this feeling of, oh my God. But so the confidence thing, we can all relate. What's the most important aspect when thinking of branding yourself? Your unique voice. I love that. I feel like we are what we're teaching everybody and what we're talking about on our panels, maybe it's rubbing off a little bit, because I think we would all agree. But then your work, it should stand on its own as 59%. I think that's, yeah.
Likable is a big part of getting your work sold.
Yes.
Huge part of getting your work sold. It's not just the networking aspect, but like when you're in a room, and Felicity can attest to this, a lot of writers we talk to who haven't made the development slate, it's because they're just unpleasant. And how are you going to pitch that in a room if this industry is all about collaboration? And if you're not collaborative, if you think you know better than everybody who's come before you, you're not going to get very far, because every producer we talk to wants to know first and foremost, great, if it's gotten to a certain level, yeah, the writing's great, the story's great, but will we like working with this person? It's such a big thing.
And I just want to add to that for the ladies out there, because we are told most of our lives to smile more and be likable and be nice and be pleasant and say yes. Being likable does not mean you have to do all those things and be like a yes person and sure, right, and like and kind of like, you know, lessen yourself or make yourself small to be whatever, like likable to a group of people. It means being authentic to yourself. It means being confident or finding a way to be confident, and it means being collaborative and wanting to work with people and being fun and outgoing and love your project. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like, I mean, there's lots of introverts out there. You can still be an introvert and be, you know, and put yourself in a room.
Yeah.
You can still have your own personality.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just want to, there's a comment on a comment, but somebody in the chat box said, I've heard that from my mentors, that you want to be easy to work with. And in a way, you're speaking to that, Shayna, in that, yes, of course, we want to be amenable while working with other people, but we don't need to go to the, okay, I'm going to take every single note and I'm never going to question anything.
Yeah, you still have to stand up for yourself too and believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Genuine is the thing. We were doing a practice pitch with our agent and with a writer, and her concern was that he's always on, he's always smiling. And it's like, that's not real life. We want to know that you are a real human being and that you have opinions. You'll take notes, but also you're genuinely kind and a good person, like to, you know, again, about be collaborative. So, I mean, these are, when you're out there pitching in particular, it's not just about like always being on and being able to sell. Don't be afraid of that. Just be sincere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You yourself are attached to that project, and if you are hired, those people are going to be working with you for a very long time.
Yeah, no one can tell your story as well as you can.
Totally. And there's and that's the next portion of what we're going to chat about. Why are you the one to tell that story? But I did want to just comment on the number 4, a little bit of a trick question in that number 4, which is kind of on purpose, because all of those reasons are perfectly fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with trying to make money. To sell your script, you want to make money, you know. I do like that the respect portion is a little lower, because, you know, we shouldn't necessarily be doing this so that we receive validation. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with receiving a little respect. And, you know, I mean, you want that. You want to receive that. Anyway, let's all just try to tell a good story. You know, I'm a consultant. I have been for a long time. I've worked with a ton of writers. There's a writer recently that I've worked with who wanted to work on a particular project. And I asked him outright, why are you the one to work on this? Because it's a very female-oriented story. 2 sisters, you know, it's about parenthood. It's all these things. And it was really a genuine question that I wanted to ask. And he said, I just think it's a really interesting story. I'm like, okay, I mean, that's a good enough answer. But at the same time, the personal elements of that story are very purely female. And a man commenting on that, you know, you can, but you aren't going to know the intricate elements of a female's life. You just won't. So questions like that are important, but they're scary too, because I don't want to tell a writer to not work on something that he or she is excited or passionate about. So with that in mind, how would you all comment on that? How do you choose the project that you want to work on? Let's just start randomly. Scott, why don't we start with you? You know, what would you tell somebody within that realm?
Yeah, actually, I do every year I speak at some schools at these different like creativity conferences that different high schools put on. And I tell people that your audience will find you. If you have something that you're crazy about, there's pretty good chance that there's other people out there that are also crazy about it, that if you start to put yourself out there, whether you're doing your own YouTube show or writing something, imagine if somebody else, you think you have this little fun hobby or interest, and then suddenly you walk into a bookstore and there's a book on it on the shelf, you'd buy it. And I don't know, I think it's just be tenaciously pursuing what makes you happy, because it will connect with people, which is a way to avoid answering the question in a way. but it's really authentic. It's true.
Well, then, so maybe to dig in a little bit more, and this is a really vague question, Scott, so I apologize for putting this first.
All right.
But what makes a project special and unique? What makes a story special and unique? Because that is what the industry needs right now. They're looking for something they haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think that's great, because and it's a good case in point example, because I was caught flat-footed the first time an agent asked me this question, because my first screenplay I ever wrote was a true adapted mafia story. And this is long enough ago that The Sopranos was still on the air. And they said, well, if somebody wants to watch a mafia movie, they'd watch The Sopranos. So what makes yours different? And I just didn't know how to answer that. And I brought that question with me with everything I've always done since. And I actually use that as part of a way to pitch too. Say, let's look at things that might be similar to this, but here's where mine ups it. And it could be in a bunch of different ways. It's a storytelling method. You've got this, we may have seen this story before, but never with this type of a character. But that is something I think I try to look at every element on the way through. And again, I'm usually nowadays pitching docu-series reality shows. And so I will take a look at the successful things out there and stuff that I admire. And I just try to see, okay, where do I get frustrated while watching this? And how would my show not do that?
Great.
It's interesting, the breaking in part of this, even when you were saying that about doing a mafia script, my film Contract Killers is about a guy who's hired to perform his first hit, but I'm adopted, and the main character is adopted into a mafia family, and he's so out of place. It doesn't fit this family, and the hit that he has to perform is on this really unlikely character. And so that, for me, is why I was qualified, because the character was adopted into some other family, right? And had to do something that just didn't fit the normal, what felt normal to him in the family that he was adopted into. So, and I find a connection to all the scripts that I write. It comes from somewhere personal. I know we look at the world, and we're probably going to talk about marketability and that kind of thing later, but writing to the market versus writing what you feel in your heart. There's so many platforms now available to you to write. And like you said, Scott, your work will be found if you write from your heart, if you write passionately for something that means something to you, because there's so much more access now than ever. So don't look at the market as a means, like, what does the market want from you? Because more than likely, we're already 10 steps behind what the market's already paid for, and it's coming in a year or 2 or 3 years. And they're looking for the next thing that's interesting. So you got to write to your heart, and what passion. When we feel that vulnerability and that passion, that's what is going to be sellable, because somewhere out there, someone's going to want to buy it or see it.
Jerren.
All well put. I think, especially in 2020, we need to think about genders and races and people writing those stories. And it's hard because I think we want to see more of that on screen. So the more people writing that stuff normalizes that. Years ago, when Darren Aronofsky made Black Swan, I saw a Q&A with him. Someone asked him, why are you right to tell, how did you tell this woman's story? And he said, I never thought about her as a woman or a man. I just thought about her as a character. And I always loved that. The thing is, that movie is problematic now when you look at it a little bit, but also it just depends on the story you're telling. I think a lot of people go, okay, well, if I'm going to tell a woman's story, it has to be these things that define a woman, as opposed to just this character is a woman and this is the story she's having. If it is one of those things that only a woman can tell, you're probably not the right person to do that, or you need to find an angle, a way in to do yeah, the movie I made has a Black woman and a Mexican man, and it deals with legacy of hatred. I had to find an angle in to do that. So it's complicated, but just look at you know, I do think it's good to, I always think when you're writing characters, go, why isn't this a woman? Or why isn't this a person of color or whatever? It's probably because that's filtered through your own experience. So think about, could you make that character a woman? And really look at the reasons why or why not.
I think in your story, that, you know, for Craig's example, being adopted, can then be, that is your unique POV, point of view, because you have that inside of you. And then you tell a story where that means something. And everything, we have so many unique points of view that are just you. If we've talked about this before, but if we gave the same beats for a story to 5 different people, each would write a very different piece, because that's what you bring to it. You bring you. And this whole idea about being able to hide yourself, it is impossible. We see you very clearly in your writing, just as you see us very clearly in the movies we like to watch. It reveals so much about who we are as people, and your writing reveals who you are as a person too. And that is fantastic. It should be celebrated, and you should show more of yourself and not less.
That vulnerability is critical.
If you guys need any, if you're looking for something to read on this sort of like topic, this book, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, is epically amazing. If you are sort of in that place where you are trying to live creatively, but you have fear or you have anxiety about it, it's such a great book. I've listened to it twice on Audible during our quarantine lockdown, and it's just opened me up a lot. And sort of on this same topic. It's really great. So if you guys want to check that out.
And someone was asking about, good suggestion, Shayna. Someone was asking about cultural appropriation. They asked a couple of times. That is a huge thing to think about. Honestly, you have to. And if you think it's an issue, you should reach out to people from that background. See if you can co-write with them. Help bolster their voices.
And I wanted to actually address that one as well, Jerren, because I don't know if anybody has not seen it yet, you should check it out. It's over on our Pro Tips and Tricks page. But our horror in color panel from just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, really eye-opening stuff. I loved it. And I've been able to be in the position where I did some casting, and yes, because I come from my own background of, you know, white suburbia, that when I was envisioning these characters, they were all white. In my head, it was unconscious bias, you know? And then we had actors come in who gave great readings, and a role that was supposed to go to an older white man went to a middle-aged Black female. And that was great. That was good. But there's a huge difference between diversity and inclusion. And so that's something that gets talked about in that panel. So I would definitely recommend checking that out if you guys haven't yet, over on our Pro Tips and Tricks page.
I think
Agreed. It was a great panel.
That you're not making those choices just to be politically correct, just so that you're making sure that your project's diverse. It's because if you are writing a project that has that socially conscious background, diversity, et cetera, then why wouldn't you talk to someone who knows more about that in order to draw as much out of that as you can? Because there are things that you just don't know. You just don't know about that. I don't know what it's like to be a female. So I need to either learn more or come at certain female-oriented stories in a different way. Like in my book, my main character is a 16-year-old teenage girl. And technically, she's a fairy, but even so, I don't know anything about fairies. I didn't know anything about 16-year-old teenage girls. So all of that stuff, I had to really think outside the box. I grew up with 3 older sisters. That made a little bit of a difference. But I also knew a lot about family and what it meant to be within a family, and then how horrible it would be to lose that family. And so that was my angle with the main character. There probably could have been ways to strengthen that main character just by, you know, bringing in more female accents of the writing. But anyway, I think you get where we're going with that. It's a tricky topic. We don't want to be telling you what to write, but you do need to be asking yourself, why am I writing this? That's the big question.
Max, tell everyone what your book is called so they can go find it.
It's called The Wish Keeper. It's one word. Wish Keeper is one word. And you can find it on Amazon. I don't want to make this like a big pulpit on why you should, but if you like young adult fantasy stories, it's a quick, easy read, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Great. I wanted to add quickly out of that, just because we all are pitching things to production companies and stuff. Felicity and I are doing these meetings every day. we hear a lot of lip service lately about finding diversity. We are finding that they're wanting this stuff. It's just a matter of finding it. That's where the breakdown happens, right? There's gatekeepers and stuff, but they are looking for this stuff. So if you can get your stuff seen by us or any of these whoever you can, people are looking for those voices, and we're happy to spotlight them.
Branding, being proactive, we kind of talked a little bit about proactivity, but not in specifics. So there's a lot to talk about here in terms of how to brand yourself. We talked about original voice, unique voice, figuring out why it is that we want to be writing what we're writing and why. So Felicity and Jerren, we'll kind of gear this toward the two of you first, because you work with our development slate of writers, but you also manage a lot of our contests, if not all of them. And so you can double up in some of the answers there in terms of how do you navigate a contest path, but then how do you also consider branding yourself, and should you brand yourself as a type of writer? I work on this genre, I'm this type of writer. So I don't know, I don't have like a specific question there, but what do you notice about branding and the contest world? You know?
Yeah, we have a very specific thing for that we tell our development site writers that I'll let Felicity speak to, and then I'll address the contest thing because I have something to say to that.
Okay, cool. We basically say that your brand is your voice. We kind of like go back to that same thing, but now more than ever, stories are told across genre. So, and if you have, it's much more, I like everyone. If you have an ISA profile, anyone that's watching, this is our top tip for the development slate profile. So do this to your own. Don't tell me you were 5 when you moved from Chicago, although I love Chicago. Start with being the writer start with the writer you want to be. I am a writer who does this. I am a screenwriter. I am a TV pilot writer. I'm a feature film writer, and my interest is in interesting characters that tackle social issues using incredible dialogue and witty banter, and it's surprising endings. You know, whatever it is that is really, you will have something that you can't get away from again in your voice. That's your hook as a person, your hook as a writer. Start with that. So if someone's clicking through trying to find you on the ISA website, they know exactly what kind of writer they're going to get from the get-go. That is your brand. The stories you like to tell and how you tell them is your brand. I think there used to be a tale that you were like, I'm a horror writer, I like romance. You can still like that, but that's not all you are. Don't box yourself in that way anymore. It's more about the stories and the characters that you explore. That's who you are. That's your voice. And then I think for branding itself, we always talk about building up your writer's resume. That's your brand. Being on socials these days, it really is necessary. Twitter, from the WGA stuff and the writers on Twitter and how they banded together and have found each other and formed these little groups. Get on it. There's so much information being shared there. And also, if you are great at coming up with one-liners or being funny or having some insight about the business, you can make friends there. And these connections, these friends later on, they might help you with something. They might help you with a bit of information you might be looking for. If you are doing a sensitive topic and you want to speak to someone and say, I don't know about this world. Does anyone know about this world? Can I have a call with you to talk about it so my writing is more informed? You might be able to find them on Twitter or Instagram or one of those other platforms, Facebook. So you have to get your name out there. You have to find other writers and be interested in the writing world. Building up your resume can go through contests. It can go through development evaluations. We offer that. So notes on the site. Follow other managers that you're in love with. It's worth following them on Instagram if you want to try and we come into that a bit later, but it's worth commenting on their successes if they have a success. Same with directors that you like, that you would love to direct your movie one day. It's staying involved and connected with that world. It's all more available to you than ever. It does take some work, but as Jerren was saying, this is your business. So, even if you gave yourself an hour a day to do this work, I understand everyone is busy and has other lives, But this is the building of your recognition, your place in the field. And I think once you start to realize, I mean, the ISA, the whole reason why Craig created this whole place for you to put everything in one place is then you can just send a link to someone and go, this is who I am. You want to know who I am? This is who I am. This is my resume, my writers, my social. This is my video that I've created about who I am. My story matters. You can do that on the site. And then you can also have all your screenplays there. They can read all your log lines. You can put your synopsis up there. And it just allows you to say to someone, this is me. Know who you are as a writer, because then someone can hire you.
And that directly connects what you're saying, Felicity, to how we started this whole panel. What's our favorite story and why? You need to be asking about that, because that is going to be infusing the projects and stories that you're writing. And that's then how you can at least begin a profile on the ISA page, but also in conversation. Like you can say, I love those stories that kind of do this. And so that's kind of what I try to do in mine. And then people just kind of get you a little bit. That's what we mean by brand. So you're right, Felicity. It isn't so much I'm a horror writer. If you want to only write horror, great, that's part of your brand. But at this point, we've seen so many really good horror movies and a lot of bad ones. So now you have to go above and beyond and say, here's my type of horror movie. Look what Jordan Peele did. There's a horror movie, but this is my take on a horror movie. And it was totally different. So anyway, Jerren, go ahead and dive in.
Well, so many people that we talk to just want twists on genres now too, or combining of genres. So it does no good to just say, I do only the genre. To speak to what Felicity said, a perfect example of this is we've been running our My Story Matters videos with a bunch of writers of color. Jasmine Leva, I think was our first one we ran. She branded herself perfectly. She said, I'm a writer who likes to tell stories about characters that are put into a box and they code switch and all that stuff. And then she said, to apply that, she thought of a sci-fi movie. The branding isn't the sci-fi. The branding is she likes to write about characters that are put into a box.
Yeah.
And that's what we like to tell our Dev Slate writers, and that's what works for all of you. I think that's the branding you should work on. Felicity has said it all perfectly, so I don't want to add to that anymore. The contest part of it, in terms of contest branding or whatever, I'm beating this drum, but I'm taking it back to your screenwriting is your small business. You should be able to, I would look at contests as advertising for your business. And I say that because so many people gravitate toward the big four contests or whatever they are, which are great. But if you're advertising your first time script or whatever, that's like advertising over here on Sunset Strip amongst all the big billboards with Netflix and all that stuff. You're just going to get lost. So you got, in terms of branding and your contests, you got to look for those contests that kind of specifically suit you and look at what the contest prizes are. Because so many are just money, but some are like we do. We like to build a relationship with writers. Final Draft has their award. All of them have different things. We do table reads, all that stuff. So it's a matter of finding that way and what's the best route to advertise your specific voice in the script. That's how I would look at branding and contests.
Great. That kind of filters into a little bit of a question that maybe Shayna, Craig, and Scott, you can talk about to this a little bit. I'm jumping ahead some, but we're going to eventually get back to some specifics like pitch decks and Bibles and sizzles and all these different visuals and stuff, which is a little bit of a part of that advertising that you're talking about, Jerren. Well, it's a big part, but is it so important? We'll start with you, Scott, because I know Craig has a lot to say on this topic, so I don't want Scott to just copy Craig.
Oh.
But is representation so essential for writers at the relatively early stages of their career?
I mean, I would say no. I'm maybe not the best person to ask. I do want to, quick aside, as Jerren was talking about contests, all the contests that are on our website are vetted. So as Jerren was talking about, and I think this is always very important to do, is you weigh your submission fee versus what the prizes are, and you find your whatever balance you're comfortable with. Everything on our site has been vetted. It's an established contest that's either been around for more than 5 years and has a good history of being valid and having a place in the industry, or if it's younger than that, then it's just already off to a really great start. It's got good connections. It's got good other companies associated with it. So you can always feel confident submitting to contests on our site because I'm the guy that vets them. But I think contests are a great way to go out there and get known a bit. There's conversation here about, oh gosh, does this really mean I have to be on Twitter? I hate Twitter. I don't like social media. I hate social media so much, but I'm on it as well, just for my own needs. And of course you can block or mute the bad people, and there's lots of bad people out there. But I did a video, there's a video up, I should say. The Sunlit Night was a movie that premiered at Sundance 2 years ago. It was a Zach Galifianakis movie. And she said that, or she was the writer. I don't know if she didn't direct it, she wrote it. She cast her movie. She got Jenny Slate as the first name attachment because she just tweeted at her one day, and Jenny tweeted back. And then her agent was like, hey, why is Jenny Slate tweeting you? And then it just got the ball rolling. And it was something just as casual as saying hi. And, so the internet, the social media can really work. Also, when it comes to social media and doing things without necessarily needing your representation. I had a really great bit of insight from a producer that I also interviewed, who he said what he likes to do is track where executives are moving around through LinkedIn. That is the social media that he likes to use, because if an executive is moving from one company to another one, when they land, well, they want to be able to show their new boss that they've got this slate of projects they're developing. So if you know who is who and what they've done in the past, you might have an idea for what their voice is and what their interests are. And if it lines up with you, keep an eye on them and use LinkedIn to kind of circumvent the need for representation.
That's a good idea. It's great. Hey, you brought it back around to representation, Scott. Very nice.
I'm tap dancing a little bit, but I got there.
Great. It's a really good answer because it gives resources on top of it. But Craig, in terms of answering and talking about this topic of representation, obviously contests and gaining those accolades from winning and doing well in contests is usually what helps you gain representation. But how necessary is it?
At an early stage, I don't know if it's necessary at all. Agents, managers, what you really want, I think, is for an agent or manager to find you, for not for you to go out and try to get them. We all would love to say we're repped at such and such company, but are you ready for that? Do you have your first, second, third, and fourth ideas prepared? I just, when I had a manager with my pilot, it was, I was constantly calling him, but I was working on other projects to make sure that I had the next thing ready in case this one didn't take off with Wrigleyville. So I would say don't worry so much about an agent or manager, but going back to the contest thing, or going back to any of some of the other ways of breaking in, producing a sizzle, which we'll talk about, development, getting on the development slate, getting feedback. Use every step of that ladder we were referencing before to just get better, because even though Damien Chazelle had Whiplash and whatever, but he was working on all this other stuff for long before that, before he was the overnight sensation, right? He kept working and working and working. And Michael Jordan didn't become Michael Jordan overnight. He was working and working and working at it. And I think you aspire to be repped by a CM, CA, or whomever, but you got to work at it every step of the way. And get better. If you use contests, I mentioned this in a video, submitting the contest, people submit, and I did it recently. I submitted a script that I wrote, and I've been in this industry a long time, but I never really went down the contest route. And it's heartbreaking not to get. It's heartbreaking to get turned down by Nickel or whomever. So, but that just means your script's not ready. It's competing in this field that it maybe isn't ready to be competing in. So use wherever the smaller contests to get feedback and submit out to 3 at a time, get feedback from 3 different organizations that are reputable. You can go on our site and find those, as Scott mentioned. Get those notes back and compare which ones are, in alignment with what story you're trying to tell. Because if a reader's coming back and 3 readers who you know nothing of come back with the same note, don't be mad at the reader. 3 people are saying that they don't understand what you're trying to say. So take that as a sign to get better. And if you do that with some smaller competitions, you're not kind of throwing money away at these bigger ones and competing against 10,000 submissions. So And then inevitably, as you're winning some contest or even placing, you'll get to a place that happens to a lot of people is they get to quarterfinals. Like, I made quarterfinals in this contest and this contest, and nothing happened after that. It's like, well, then you're not listening. You made quarterfinals. Did you make the finals? Did you win? Because there's still another layer that you need to add to your screenplay. So then get more feedback. Keep using each step as a means to get better. Listen to people, submit to more readers, get as many notes as you possibly can. And in time, you'll find out what is working, what's not working with your script. And then when you do make the finalists, or you get Felicity's or Jerren's attention on through our platform, then an agent or a manager could be coming your way. But you might even have a better path going out to producers if your script has gotten some success. So, this is one of the things that it was nice having my script. Like I said before, shooting Contract Killers, and just took a chance. I just shot it. It didn't cost that much money because we did that trade with that infomercial, and then it got into some festivals, and somebody else saw it, a writer who'd written a good story and had done well, and he called me. I mean, that's what you want. You want to be in a position where they're calling you inevitably. So getting a representation to me isn't critical at this stage in the game, where unless you're actually placing or winning in contests. It's all about trying to just getting better.
I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I think having an agent or a manager is helpful, but I think it has to be the right person for you in what you want out of somebody. And you better know what you want from an agent and manager before you just enter into an agreement with somebody who may not be like-minded with you or have the same goals. Or I think you also have to be ready to do 90% of the work. Yes, Jerren, I will go to you next. You have to be ready to do that hard work because managers have other clients also. So if you're not busting your ass and hustling and doing the work and writing and reaching out to people and giving them ideas and believing in all of that, and yourself, then it's not really going to be helpful for you. And, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't have an agent or manager, but I'm certainly busting my butt to try to get my scripts out to producers or meet somebody through a friend who may know somebody. It's just the hustle. Like in this day and age, it's the hustle. And like Scott said, it's social media. It's having real relationships with people. It's keeping connections alive with someone that you met. It's reaching out to somebody that you heard speak in a panel and tell them thank you, because what you said really resonated with me. I mean, it's just true, authentic connections with people also that helps. And that will help you get representation. But again, I'm going to go back to the beginning of what I said. You have to find somebody that matches with what you want out of your career and your life.
Yeah. And to one more point, Jerren, I mentioned it before, the agents, managers get a percentage, but the bulk of that is on you. You have to do 90% of the work. So if you're not prepared for that 90%, what good is an agent or a manager really at that point? So
right, you don't get to sit back and just be like, oh, okay, got one now. Okay, do your work.
Prepared, have lots of stories and ideas and
more work.
Ready to go.
Your work is to write. It's probably 80% of what you're doing. The other 10% of your 90 is to then getting out and doing what your agent or manager is usually doing, and then the manager fills the gap. Anyway, sorry, Jerren, go ahead.
It's fine. No, it's all great. It's all, two things. Mostly concerned with that. But first, what Craig said was very important. It's probably better to go to producers rather than managers. I didn't know that for the longest time. It's 1,000% true. You would be well spent. Your time is better spent served, you know what I'm saying, trying to get producers, because once a producer is interested and you get your work made, that's when managers come to you because you have something to sell. That's when managers want you. It really is, we're conditioned to look at it backwards, but it truly is 1,000% get your stuff to producers. That's what we do here at ISA. We're going to producers. We send stuff out to managers too for people that are ready and whatever, but it's always better to go to producers. In terms of the working hard part, without naming people or whatever, there was recently a big Twitter thread. I'm not on Twitter, so I was alerted to this, about pitch decks and managers wanting pitch decks and writers saying, we don't want to do those. Just look at the script. That should be it. It used to be. That's not it anymore. It really isn't. It's not about writing your script. It's about getting someone's attention. And if a manager is interested in you, I think you should look at that as, oh my God, someone's interested and excited. That makes me excited about doing more work to get my stuff out there. The thing that was said in that Twitter thread that was so interesting to me was like, oh, they only want me to do a pitch deck so they can attach themselves and go sell it. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds incredible. Yes, I'll do the work. I'll do a pitch deck. Yeah, great. That's like literally what I want. That's your job, is to open a door and go sell it. You have to do, you're going to be asked to do a lot of work. I personally was like, I'll do as much work as possible, because if you're at the bottom of the rung, you really got to do that. You're competing against people that they're in the WGA, they have whatever. And there's a lot of advice on that thread too from people I love and respect, big writers, but that just don't know what it's like to be at the bottom with no connections. So yeah, it really is about like working hard, getting a pitch deck made, going out to producers. That's the best route in terms of branding yourself, marketing, all of that stuff. It all comes together that way, and managers will come.
And I think that's the other thing about it, to add to that point, is that honestly, no one wants to read a word. Everyone is busier than ever. So if you have some nice, pretty pictures that give you the tone and the kind of characters and it should be a pleasure for you anyway. You can actually learn a lot about the screenplay when you put it together. You'll find other things, and it should thrill you to kind of pull pictures and think, oh my goodness, who's that character, and what's that going to look like, and what's the tone, what is it, how do I want it to feel, so that you can convey it. The other thing also to remember when you're putting a pitch deck together is, again, do not forget it's your pitch deck with your unique voice telling this unique story. So if there's a way that you can personalize it or bring it to life, other than just saying, these are the pages. If it's a crime story, maybe put some crime images in it, or some wanted posters, or some slash tape in it. Find something that makes it more than just, this is the pictures of the story of my screenplay. Give it some personality too.
It also helps you hone in exactly what your story is, because you don't have that much room on a page. Yeah. And you got to shorten it. You can't have a 3-page synopsis. You've got to figure out how to shorten it. You got to figure out who your characters are. You have to figure out what your tone is, what your theme, themes are. It helps you. I mean, that's where it came from.
Absolutely.
Is lookbooks of like, here's the meat of the story and here's all the little pieces. And you have to do that for your own work. It helps you in figuring out exactly what your story is. If you're writing a script and you don't know what your overall sort of like theme is, what this is about underneath your characters, this is a great way to help you kind of get there, because you have to figure out, okay, visually, what am I thinking here? I love pitch decks and lookbooks.
Yeah, it's great.
It's helped me immensely.
Yeah, it helps you. It helps so much with your writing. I do them all first now. Pitch decks, lookbooks, or log lines, all that stuff is the first, and you really get that together, because it's going to help you in your writing. But more than that, once you're done with the writing, you already now know who's the audience for this? What's the market for this? What's the demographic? All that stuff that people, producers and managers and all those things people want are going to ask. You know that by doing that yourself. So it just helps you immensely doing that.
And you don't have to have things in it like budget. You don't need to know anything like that. You need to know what your logline is, a short synopsis, your character breakdowns, maybe something about theme if it's in there. If you have big set pieces, you can put that in there if there's like great moments that you're trying to highlight. And it doesn't really have to be this long, big thing. There's this great program, a site online called Canva, that you can build your own on there. They have templates that you can start building on and having fun with. If it's something you're totally not good at, maybe you can reach out and find someone who can help you put that together. But there's so many ways to do it now, and it really does help.
Yeah. Go ahead, Craig. Sorry.
It's just so critical to make yourself stand out. And that includes the lookbooks, a poster, doing pitch videos, and especially a log line. I mean, they're really hard to write, but you got to spend a lot of time working with people who've read your script or you've practiced pitching it to find the perfect words. We go through thousands of there's almost 30,000 screenplays on the site, and we get 8,000 screenplays submitted to us a year. I mean, the logline needs to stand out. That's the first thing we read. So spend some time. You're a writer, and they're really hard to write. I admit that. I'm awful at it. But you can work with somebody until you find the perfect words to help you stand. Read a ton of other log lines and see how they're very cliche, or they don't really tell me enough. They don't give me enough meat to be excited about the story. So all these things will help you break in if you're taking the time to improve the way you're presenting your work to the world.
So
Yeah. Sorry, Max. Sorry. Last thing about that that I wanted to get in.
Yeah.
Going back to that big Twitter thread, I just want writers that don't have representation or whatever, just breaking in, to understand when a producer gets 3 scripts on their desk and 2 of them are by WGA writers or whatever, and yours is not, and it happens to get there, they have time to read 1 script, they're gonna pick one of those other scripts, unless you can stand out because you're not WGA yet or whatever. And that's going to be with a pitch deck. So you can go like, actually, here's the vision of this. You don't know me at all. But and that's why they're so important in this modern day. Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
That's Jerren's TED Talk.
We could go for easily another hour on all these things. We want to segue a little into some success stories. Just briefly, Felicity, you've got the finger on the pulse in terms of those success stories. We all are aware of these things, but one success story I know of, he's not an ISA member, but it marries this idea of pitch decks and tone and feeling and showing who you are and then finding success out of that. But Wes Ball, he's the director of multiple Maze Runner movies, his own company. He's been attached to a bunch of things. And he created a 12-minute visual effects story without any dialogue because he was really good at visual effects. And that just blew up around the social media stratosphere. He got a meeting with Fox, and they said, we will make your feature version of that 12-minute short if you direct Maze Runner for us. And he basically walked out of Fox with 2 directing deals. Sounds a lot easier said than done. But it shows that if you can prove that you have ability and talent and you understand how to be presenting visuals, presenting these words, people are going to notice you. You just have to work at it and practice. But let's talk about just a few recent success stories, and then we're going to go into what we hope is our big takeaway from this panel. And we have time for maybe a few little questions. So Felicity, just top of your head, some recent success stories that are really exciting.
Beth Hannah, she submitted for a development evaluation. She got on the development slate. We really liked her script, The Tar. It has led to her having two general meetings, one with Ben Stiller's companies, The Red Hour, another with the producer, J. Todd Harris. It's also allowed her to have a meeting with another manager that we introduced her to that she turned down. And then she signed with Citizen Skull Productions. And that's all from submitting a script for a development evaluation. Another one, I can tell you another one. Someone who we ran a contest on the ISA, one of these live Zoomy ones, for the pitch panel. And so people had to submit their pitches.
It was free.
And it was free. Yes, it was free. And we've got some amazing pitches. Jerren and Shayna have actually done a video about how to improve your pitch. That's also on YouTube. If you are pitching anywhere live, do read it. It makes such a big difference. The difference from the first time we did this contest to the second was insane, and the only thing that's different was their video in the middle of it. So Crystal Harris, she was someone that we chose as one of the 4 winners. She has been invited on the development slate and has just signed with a manager, Matt Prader at Citizen Skull Productions. He loves us. It's the second one he's taken. Another project that did a development evaluation 3 years ago called That Sister Thang, with me, a marketing evaluation. And they were invited onto the slate. They've been winning contests. They've been shopping it around town. We were very interested ourselves to look after them. They have just signed with the African channel, and they are being put on as exec producers, and their project has been optioned.
A tiny sliver of all the success stories that have come through. And that isn't just to tout what we're doing and say how amazing the ISA is. I mean, yes, we'd like to do that, but it's more about that this is possible and that these are ways to break in. And again, to me, being the director of education with the ISA, of course I stress education as much as possible, but it's kind of a no-brainer. It's kind of crazy to me to think that I sometimes have to convince people to educate themselves. This is a craft. This is something you have to work on. And there's never an end to it. You're always trying to improve. The best actors in the world right now still go to acting coaches. The top athletes in the world still go to practice. So you have to constantly hone in. I think that would be my takeaway, that these webinars and Zoom conferences that we have on a fairly regular basis, right? We basically have one a week in various forms, is to make sure everybody watching and taking part in this sees the value in participating in something like this and just being a part of a community, taking away certain things that you feel are important to you in your writing. We try to keep it as broad as possible because everybody is different and relative. But that would be my hopeful takeaway that you have, other than Thai food that Felicity so loves, that you learned something from this, the Lord, God forbid. So let's just go randomly. Craig, maybe why don't you start and we'll just kind of bounce around.
Well, I think it goes back to the try everything that I said at the beginning. You got to be proactive, and the more you connect with people, and even if it is like Scott had mentioned, being a PA on a set, I'm going to name drop here, but a long time ago, I wrote a letter to Al Pacino. And weirdly enough, I get a call. I'm 26 years old. I get a phone call, and it's Al Pacino's assistant. And he said, "Al, read your letter. Loved what you had to say is about how to break into the industry as an actor." And the words that I got from that, even though I never talked to Al, don't even know if the guy even read my letter, but his assistant called, and it was like 3 degrees of separation. He said, Al said to try everything, even if that means volunteering at a theater, and you open the door for people, you take tickets, whatever it is, try everything and meet everybody you possibly can. And that I've lived with for the last, whatever the math is, 24 years. Try everything. I've done sizzle reels. I've gone to pitch events. I've shot my own stuff. Whatever you can, make friends, collaborate with as many people as you can, shoot on an iPhone, do what it takes to get your work, enter competitions, and do them within your own budget, and be careful. But it's all about everything you possibly can. You have to be super proactive for your career. That's the big takeaway for me.
When I was in college still, I interned at Revolution Studios, and that was awesome. Like, any chance you get to walk in the door of a place that's doing big, exciting things, jump at it. But Scott Bernstein was a producer there at the time, and I remember he told me one thing, take the job and then figure out how to do it. That's something that just always stuck with me. And, you don't want to get too in over your heads, but it's very easy for us to say, like, well, I don't know how to do that job since I've never done it, but you'll never do it until you do it. So that's something that really always sticks with me. And then something that I developed on sets, but I think it applies to everything, is this philosophy, whatever you're doing, that the job that you're doing now is your audition for the next job. So, like, always imagine that you're around people that hopefully will hire you when they go on to the next thing. So look to impress all the time. And when it could be a slog, when it could be a tough, hard, whatever it is that you're doing, if it's a long day of shooting or another rewrite that I thought I was done with this, that puts a little bit of energy in you when you think that this is the audition for the next gig. And that's just something that I always take with me.
It totally relates to writing, because you're always going to be, hopefully anyway, looking to have another project that you're working on. So you want to be amenable when working through those rewrites, and making sure that person would then be able to talk around town, because it is a small town and they'll talk about you. Really good point. Shayna, let's go to you.
Okay, so I think my takeaway is two parts. One, on one side, it's writing something that's really great, and that takes work, and it takes joining a writing group or getting feedback, entering content, getting better at your writing consistently. That has to be the thing that's consistent, is always working on your words. And you got to have something that's unique and something that we haven't seen before, that's not derivative of something else. So first is that. And then two, I think as aside from writing, being a writer is having confidence in yourself and respect for yourself and know what you want and just hustle, hustle, hustle.
Love what you're doing. And then you won't mind how hard it is at times and the rejection and understand it's, yeah, sometimes when someone says, they say no to you, that can be very hurtful, but don't take it personally. They just haven't connected with it. And them saying no might mean that someone else says yes. There's that whole story about Jennifer Aniston that she, a week before she got Friends, she was like in the last two for an advert and she didn't get it. And if she'd got the advert, she'd have missed the audition for Friends and she wouldn't be where she is now, picked on continually for maybe being pregnant and the ex-wife of Brad Pitt, but still a multimillionaire and a great actress. So I feel like, someone saying no to you one day might mean that someone perfect says yes the next. So love it. And then you won't mind how hard it is and keep going.
To kind of glom onto what Felicity was saying with love what you do is I'm always of the opinion, the movies that stand out to me are the ones that are, they're going to be someone's favorite movie or least favorite movie. They're never just kind of like, and I think, I'm going to butcher this, but I think Lady Gaga said if there's 100 people in a room, she wants 99 of them.
Like 1,000 times.
No, I can't get it. It's essentially like 99 people are going to be like, one person's going to be, I love it. That's the person that I would always kind of go for. I think that's how I approach stuff. And that's why that's what we mean by voice is like, only this person can write this story. So that's always the takeaway for me is voice and actionable stuff, pitch decks and comps. This meets this. That's always good.
All right. We're going to have time maybe for a couple questions. Sorry, everybody.
Max, what's your takeaway though?
Well, my takeaway, kind of like what I was saying, is that I want people to educate themselves as much as possible. Focus on growing your ability. Don't be satisfied with how good you are now. Even if you're incredible, there's always room to improve somewhere. There's always some new lesson to learn, some new feeling to have. Go out and experience things so that you then can write to those feelings. That's what some of the best authors in the world have always done. They were just explorers. People just went out and experienced things. Or they experienced something so strongly that they lived it and then they studied it. And there was a constant level of how can I get more out of this and squeeze more out of this kernel. So you just have to be asking questions, which technically is just educating yourself. You have to educate. On that note, I'm going to put a little comment in the box. We are running 50% off my online screenwriting class that we created with the International Screenwriters Association. It's called The Craft Course. You can go to thecraftcourse.com, and to get 50% off, you can put the code in AugustCC50. We'll be running that for a little while, kind of a back to school special, but normally it's $99, so now you'll get it for $49.50. 12-week course that you can keep for the rest of your life. I think $50 is a pretty good little deal. Anyway, let's do a couple questions. I'm going to randomly choose here. We have quite a few in there, so everybody that put questions in there, I apologize. Hopefully we kind of answered them as we went. But let's see here. I love that this person is adding y'all in the writing of the question. Do y'all find any value in starting, getting foot in the door, breaking in, with script reading? Any opinions, suggestions, feedback? So I'm assuming it could be two things. Script reading, meaning reading other people's scripts, which is a very emphatic yes. But then readings, table reads. Felicity, why don't you speak to table reads a little bit and the benefit of putting table reads together? It's a quick way for multiple people to read your script if you get them into an audience.
Yeah, I felt like that question was the other side of it. But yeah, no, I think it's reading scripts, yes. Actors read many more scripts than screenwriters, and that's why actually actors become quite good screenwriters, because they actually read loads and you see what you like and you see what you don't like, and it starts to somehow be imprinted in your brain. So yes, read scripts. You can get paid to read scripts. Just make sure you're going to a reputable company that's paying you properly and looking after you. Not like some companies don't do that. Get paid for reading. For table reads, it's an incredibly good way to understand what is working and what isn't working in your screenplay. You will also get great feedback from the actors. They will always have something to say. And they will give you clues and tips and tell you where they're missing stuff and where things are going great. To listen and hear where the dialogue flows is always wonderful. And then it also will allow you to invite other people along to come and witness it too, so they can learn about your writing and your style and your skill. Highly recommend them.
Great. This is a really good question. Thomas Barreros asks, and he's asking to anybody on the panel, so I'll just throw it out there. I know I could speak to it, but I think Shayna, maybe we'll put this in front of you first, because I know that when you were first hosting our panels, you were a little hesitant and nervous. You're like, oh gosh, I haven't done this before. But that's kind of what he's talking about in a little bit of a way. I'm stretching this, but he says, I know networking is important and essential in our industry, but what if you're an introvert or generally just not used to marketing yourself or putting yourself out there? How have you on the panel gotten over that, if that was indeed something you dealt with? So we'll just kind of start with you, Shayna.
Okay. Well, first of all, Thomas, I see you. I feel you. I am generally an introvert myself. And I think when I was asked to start sort of hosting our in-person Third Thursday questions, I was nervous. I was sweaty. Then we started switching to virtual Third Thursdays and events, and I was hosting those, and I was sweaty, nervous, and it's hard, and you have to just practice, and you have to just put yourself in a situation that is a little bit uncomfortable one time, and then it gets a little bit easier. So the next time, put yourself in another situation that's a little bit uncomfortable, and it does get easier. And I think for me, I just embrace my weirdness, and I'm getting really comfortable with just being fine with who I am. I'm not necessarily comfortable on these Zooms, like staring at myself for this whole time, because I'm constantly like, oh my God, do I look weird? I think we all have these feelings. And I think that nobody talks about it, but we all feel weird. We're all like, oh God, I have to Zoom, or I have to talk to somebody that I don't know. Everybody feels that same way. And especially, it's a lot harder when you're an introvert. So you just have to, unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit harder for you, and you have to practice. And that's my best advice, is just keep doing it, and it does get easier.
It does.
I can second that. I, even though I started the ISA, I have tremendous stage fright. Even this call today, I was sweating and nervous about. And we're on a Zoom call, right? This has happened to me my whole life. I can talk one-on-one with anybody, but put me in front of an audience and I'm terrified. And but I think that vulnerability, that's an important thing. Like Shayna's saying, standing in front of it is a huge thing about overcoming it. Once you know you have the problem, right? You got to stand in front of it. Nothing's going to go wrong, or nothing horrible is going to happen. It may go wrong. I've made some really stupid comments on stage, and that's just part of the deal. And then you just get better the next time. But every time, it happens every time. Every time we even talk about having a Zoom conference with, and I'm going to be on, I'm already start sweating, and it could be 3 days from now. So I just keep owning it every day. I'm a 50-year-old man who's terrified standing in front of people and talking, but I just keep doing it until one day when I'm 78, it'll finally go away. Who knows? But hopefully it'll be a lot sooner than that.
I think
you just got to keep doing it.
Totally, because the more you do it, the more you become comfortable with who you are, and like Shayna said, your own weirdness. And then Felicity puts your glasses on, and the irony is, we may not realize that some people may think those glasses look great on her. She may have thought she looked weird, but I think the glasses actually look pretty good. So you don't know, like you live in your head so much, other than the glare. Yeah, see, that's kind of cool.
I think, don't forget too, and I'm definitely an introvert. Like the quarantine has not changed my life at all.
Me either.
I don't forget, people like to talk about themselves. So if you are uncomfortable being on the spot, ask people about them, ask people what they're working on. And that like uncomfortableness about talking about myself helped me sell my first pitch, because I walked in the room and I just was not comfortable in the silence. But fortunately I knew enough about the company I was talking to that I just began to ask them questions about what they've been up to, what they've been going to market with. And the weird thing happened, which is first off, it didn't feel like a pitch anymore. It felt like just a conversation, which just helps. And also, he ended up telling me about the roadblocks he was going in as this production company was taking something out. So he kind of like helped me craft how I should pitch to him. So little pitching note there as well. But definitely, if you're an introvert and don't like to focus on you, ask questions to people. People like to talk about themselves, and that can help you kind of ease your way in.
And the more, I mean, you hear this all the time, and Craig and Shayna both spoke to it, but the more you do something, the more confident you become at doing it. And if you look at, again, I always use the sports analogy, but if you, I don't know if anybody watched the Bulls documentary, The Last Dance. I always knew professional athletes were confident. These guys were over the top, pardon my French, assholes. They were so cocky. And in a way, I was like thinking about it, like, I don't blame them, because they do this for 8 to 12 hours a day, and they've become so good at it that they've proven to the rest of the world that they're so good at it. So you do get to a point where you can't be overconfident, but you do have a cockiness about you because you just have, it's a constant repetition. So I think that would be the primary way of getting over any level of stage fright. In terms of being an introvert, if you don't want to be an introvert, then you don't have to be. Like, you're not born as an introvert. This isn't a disease you have. This is something you can change. You know, it's not something that someone has put into your veins.
I think I've tried to be an extrovert, and it doesn't, it drains my energy, and then I'm like, oh,
but I bet a lot of people watching this would not expect to hear that, Shayna, in terms of you.
Right, because I practice a lot, and I put myself in situations a lot where I appear to be an extrovert.
Right.
But I'm not.
Yeah. Molly, do you have any comments or anything? We'll bring Molly on. Molly is the brainchild behind pretty much everything the ISA does, other than Craig. We should get Molly's face up here. But anything you want to add? I mean, a huge thank you and shout out to Molly for putting these on.
Oh, absolutely. Huge shout out to you guys. Were amazing. Of course, we knew you would be. I want to give a shout out to Christy Daniels, who was the one who gave me the suggestion to do a poll, which was super fun. And we're going to keep doing it, I think. We can't wait to do more of these. And
yeah, our next event is when?
Yours, next Wednesday.
Wednesday is my class.
And then we have a writing sprint on Thursday on the Writer's Block Discord channel, which you'll find on our events page. And then we have a September 2nd with Jess Hines. And there might be another one thrown in there at some point. You just always keep your eye on the events page. There's always stuff.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. On Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about page format, really basics, like, well, I shouldn't say basic, but the specifics in terms of formatting. How do you do scene headings and slug lines and action lines and parentheticals? I'm going to get into all the details of that if you want to join us. It's 11 a.m. Los Angeles time on Wednesday here on Zoom. You can find out about that on the classes section on the ISA page. I wish we could all get together live because those events are always so fun, but at the same time, we are able to connect with so many more people this way. So it's a happy accident. I hope everybody's staying healthy and happy, and just take care. And we'll see you all soon. And thanks, Felicity and Shayna and Jerren and Craig and Scott. You guys were all awesome, and hopefully we can do this every month. It's easier than interviewing people we don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks for putting this together, team, but also all of you that are leaving nice comments. I get so worried that it's like, who wants to hear us talk? They want to whatever. So thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it.